Раз, раз, раз.
Коллеги, давайте тогда начинать.
Let us then begin, dear colleagues. Let us begin with the present participants. I'll try to speak louder so that you can hear me. I'm happy to see all of you today. It doesn't work.
Было слышно, сейчас не слышно.
Раз. Так, будут слышать? Слышно? Отлично.
Can you hear me? Fine. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm happy to greet you all at our today's event devoted to the Russian and Korean industrial cooperation. Today we can see a lot of guests at INNOPROM, guests from different countries of Europe and Asia, and we are particularly pleased to discuss today the cooperation with our Asian partners. We can see that our bilateral relations between Russia and the Republic of Korea are developing actively. We can see that joint activities are commenced by Russian businesses and Korean businesses. And it is particularly pleasing that this cooperation works and intensively develops in the industrial sphere. I thank you for coming here today to discuss the issues of Russian and Korean cooperation, and I would like to present our speakers who are going to participate today. Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade of Russian Federation, Georgy Kalamanov, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to the Russian Federation, Pak Robek, Chief Executive Officer of Korean International Trade Association, Lee Jan-chun, Minister of Investment of the Sverdlovsk Oblast, Dmitry Niskovsky, Professor of Kochmin University, Lee Sang-jun. We are also going to be joined soon by a colleague from the Industrial Development Fund, Sergei Vologodsky, and I also introduce a colleague from the Agency for Developing Industry and Investment of Korea, Kim Jong-keon, and the Deputy Chairman of the Government of the Moscow region, Mr. Butsayev. There are lots of issues to be discussed today and tomorrow within INNOPROM. And I would like, of course, as an organizer, as a host of this event, I would like to give the floor to the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation, represented by Mr. Georgy Kalamanov. How can you characterize the relations between Korea and Russia in the industrial area today? Where are we going, and what development trend we should choose to preserve this intense development? Good afternoon. Dear participants of today's forum, I'm happy to greet you at the next meeting of Russian-Korean Forum. As you can remember, last year at INNOPROM 2016, we also met at the Russian-Korean Forum to discuss the issues that we faced at that time regarding the relations between our two countries. Against the background of certain events over the past few years and some negative trends in the area of export and import operations between our countries that reduced the turnover of goods. I would like to note that in January through April 2017, the goods turnover between our countries has increased, and these months it is $5,700,000,000, which is 36% higher, even more higher than over the same period of the year 2016. Step-by-step enhancement of the relations between Russia and the Republic of Korea is certainly favored by the developing dialogue between the leaders of our two countries. Currently, Russia considers Korea as a strategic partner in innovative development, as well as expanding mutual investment in high priority sectors of the economy. We had a lot of meetings at different levels over the past year, and quite recently the mayor of Seoul visited the Russian Federation. We also had other meetings at different levels, and I've already mentioned the highest level, so the dialogue is ongoing, it is dynamic, and I would like to emphasize that this kind of trend I would like to continue in the future. Within this context, we welcome the agreement signed by the heads of our countries last year, memorandum of understanding between the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation and the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Energy of the Republic of Korea. This agreement is aimed at increasing full-scale cooperation between profile authorities of our countries. We are also paying a lot of attention to direct dialogue with the business. In these conditions, only continuous contacts create the required preconditions for efficient work in the long term. Currently, we are performing joint work to develop industrial cooperation on projects that increase the added value not only on the territory of Russia and Korea, but also possessing significant export potential to promote these products to the markets of third countries. Here I would like to emphasize something, because over the last time we can see that Korean companies operating in Russia, as well as specifically in the automotive sector as Hyundai, and in the IT sector like Samsung and other companies, they not only manufacture the products in Russia for the Russian market and countries of Eurasian Economic Union, they also bring this product out to third countries' markets, and we are ready to support the export of these products, including the application of some special support measures at the government level. These include mechanisms of the Russian Export Center, financial and non-financial incentives, and I would like to focus on that, and I would like our colleagues at today's forum to discuss these issues. We actively participate jointly in exhibition events, and I'm grateful for that a big delegation of the Republic of Korea is present today at the INNOPROM exhibition, and next year I hope that tomorrow we are going to sign the respective agreement confirming that the Republic of Korea is going to be INNOPROM's partner in 2018. We invite you to the next event. The largest event in Russia is going to be the MAX Aviation and Space exhibition that's going to begin on the 18th of July in the Moscow region. It is a large-scale event based on Le Bourget Farber Salon, and I think that Korean companies are also going to participate in this event. Remembering the Russian participation in Expo 2012 in Yosu, I personally dealt with this issue, and I would like to emphasize that our Korean friends made a huge event at a very high level. And remembering that, I would like to say that Yekaterinburg applied for Expo 2025, and certainly we would like to receive some support from our Korean partners and colleagues, specifically support in terms of sharing experience on holding such large-scale events. Let me wish you all success once again. Have a good day's work, not only at the Russian-Korean Forum, but at INNOPROM in general. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kalamanov. Indeed, we will have a lot of time today and tomorrow to continue this dialogue, to continue discussing different cooperation ideas. We are joined here today by the Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to the Russian Federation. Ambassador, you participate in all bilateral meetings and you see what happens between our countries. What do you think? What are the most promising cooperation areas? What areas should we be developing, and what are some new ways of cooperation you could emphasize? You have asked some very specific questions. I was going to just make a congratulatory speech, but let me still answer your questions. Up to that time, our companies in IT and automotive sector were delivering their respective products to Russia, and Russia used to deliver basically resources to Korea. But as we can see at INNOPROM, we witness that Russia is aiming at diversifying the industry, and Korea also has a well-developed internet industry and other innovative industries, and we are aiming at developing these industries. We are trying to find new growth points. As for your questions, we can think about such areas as improving the efficiency of production, as well as, and here we have a representative of Korean business, and together we can discuss possible ways of cooperation. Also, I would like to say that to institutionalize such cooperation, we will be able to sign an agreement on the free trade zone between Korea and Eurasian Economic Union. We already have the experience of signing free trade zone agreements with numerous other countries, and it doesn't mean just reducing the customs tariffs. It also contributes to reducing the investment barriers in trade, and we can also discuss these specific issues here. We are going to discuss such issues together with the Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade and with Russian experts. Now we know very well that Russia pays a lot of attention to developing the Far East. And quite recently, 2 years ago, there was a summit attended by Russian and Korean presidents at the G20 summit. And Mr. Putin invited our president to Eastern Economic Forum, and we are very interested in developing the Far East, specifically in the areas of shipbuilding, healthcare, and developing housing, developing infrastructure, and so on. And such promising areas already exist. Also, I would like to say that the Sverdlovsk Oblast, after the Moscow Oblast, is the second Russian region in terms of industrial development, and we understand it very well. That is why our representatives of our businesses are also interested in developing the Russian industry. That's why they are going to see with their own eyes the changes, the changed status of the Sverdlovsk Oblast. We, Korea, do not want to lose patience before Japan, and Korea is going to be the partner of the next exhibition. So next year, 171 company from Korea is going to participate in INNOPROM. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. All that sounds very well, and we hope that we are looking forward to welcoming a big delegation from Korea. For several past years, we have had the honor to welcome your delegations, and these delegations are organized by some Korean organizations, specifically the Korean International Trade Association, that also co-organizes the Russian and Korean Economic Forum today, and constantly contributes to establishing communications between the Russian and the Korean business. In this respect, I would like to ask the following question to Chief Executive Officer of KITA, Lee Ja-chul. If we are talking about the cooperation between Russian and Korean businesses, what should companies from both our countries pay attention to make this cooperation and interaction as efficient as possible? What are the principles and approaches to implementing joint projects by Korean companies? What are the possible other aspects in terms of establishing this fruitful cooperation? Good afternoon. Deputy Minister has left, but still I wanted to thank Mr. Deputy Minister, Mr. Kalamanov, for participating, so please pass my regards to him. We can now witness a recession in the global economy, but starting from the end of the previous year and in this year, we can see that the economy, the global economy, is beginning to recover. The latest analytics on the prospects of global economy show that we can see some revival, and as Mr. Deputy Minister has already mentioned, Russia and Korea, the volume of goods turnover between our countries is also growing. Mr. Deputy Minister has given some numbers for this year up to April, but in May these numbers are going to increase. The export is increasing by 50% and the import is going to increase by 60%. these are the prospects. But as for Russia in general, the increase is less than 10%, but the amount of sales between our countries is increasing by 50-60%. These are encouraging numbers. If this trend is going to continue till the end of this year, we can expect the recovery of trade up to a pretty high level that we have achieved earlier. However, as you know very well, the conditions of international trade are influenced by negative factors, such as protectionism trend of the new American administration and other developed countries, conflicts between China and Korea regarding the placement of American anti-missile system and the unstable situation in the region. These negative conditions mean that Russian and Korean entrepreneurs should pay extra attention to and make extra efforts to mitigate these risks by diversifying export markets and sources of import. For us, Russia is a neighbor, a country neighboring with us in the east of Eurasia. There are two parts of Russia, the eastern and the western part, and we believe that the center of Russia is in the west, in Moscow. So for us, Russia is still a little bit far away country, or has been, frankly speaking. The population of 140 million people, and according to the International Monetary Fund data, Russia is number 6 in terms of parity customer ability. Korea has 50 million countries, and its GDP in 2016 it's in the 11th place. So the amount of GDP of Russia and Korea is almost the same. And as we know very well, Russia has very rich natural and energy resources, while Korea has well-developed processing industries, including steel mills. Also, lately, Russia has paid a lot of attention to developing processing industries and industrial innovations. And this is another opportunity for cooperation between Russia and Korea. I am positive that we are going to have even more opportunities in that regard. As Mr. Ambassador has said, this year we participate in INNOPROM, and we are also going to send a business mission to the Eastern Economic Forum. Lately, representatives of regional administration have visited Korea, and every time our Korean International Trade Association organizes various events to increase the awareness of this communication between Russia and Korea. The Korean delegation includes representatives of well-respected small and medium-sized enterprises from different industries, including machining, car parts, and textile industry. And this demonstrates a strong desire of investing in Russia among Korean entrepreneurs. We expect that at this forum, Russian and Korean experts on trade and industry are going to offer new paradigms for joint activity and interaction in rapidly changing conditions of international trade. Specifically, representatives of Korean Kotra representative is also going to talk about the current status and prospects of our cooperation. Finally, I would like to thank Ministry of Industry and Trade of Russia and the government of the Sverdlovsk Oblast, the Ural Development Corporation for huge help and support during the preparation for the forum. I wish you all good new contacts, opportunities and communications and great business chances. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Lee Jianchu. In your speech, you have mentioned that for you, Russia is still a faraway country and that the center of Russia is in the European part of our country, but we are going to be closer. We want to get closer and we are walking the talk. Today, we find ourselves in the Urals, which is the border between Europe and Asia. So we are becoming closer now. So since we find ourselves here, the Urals is really a historical and current industrial capital of Russia. So here we have the Minister of Investment of the Sverdlovsk Oblast, Mr. Dmitry Niskovsky. So I would like to ask you the following questions. What can we, as the country and as the individual region, what can we offer to our Korean partners in terms of investment and innovative cooperation?
Thank you. Dear guests of the forum, I'd like to congratulate you with the start of the INNOPROM forum, and I'd like to greet all the guests of Sverdlovsk Oblast. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to hold such a forum, to exchange informations and the opportunities for cooperation. This is very topical, as next year, as we have heard, South Korea will be a partner of the International Industrial Forum of INNOPROM. I'd like to briefly speak about the opportunities that exist in Sverdlovsk region for businesses and the niches that Korean companies could use as investors. I have prepared a small presentation. The Sverdlovsk region is a key transportation hub in Russia, where aviation, railroad, and automobile roads are connected, and the main products are in the industrial sector. It's 7.5%. Then the wholesale and the retail trade. Sverdlovsk region is the most developed region from the viewpoint of machine building, and the level of industrial development is 4 times higher than the average in Russia. Such industries as metal production, machine building, pharmaceuticals, medical equipment production are developed here. Sverdlovsk Oblast cooperates with international companies and partners with more than 140 countries of the world, and we are third in the number of official representatives of foreign. We have 15 official representatives and 12 honorable consulates and 6 representatives for promotion of cultures and languages. many international companies are operating in Sverdlovsk region, and they have not only opened their production facilities but also produce technological products, process parts, produce machines and equipment for the Russian market and exports. Here you can see some companies that are operating in the Sverdlovsk region. The government of Sverdlovsk region has formed a special register of products that need to be produced in Russia. These products are now being imported from different countries. These are products from different industries: equipment for gas and oil, medicines, construction materials. This is the guaranteed selling market and a good opportunity for development. At the same time, the government introduced some restrictions for the sales of international products imported from other countries if in Russia producers of such products exist already. For example, for some companies of pharmaceuticals, there is a restriction that if there are two companies that produce such medicine in Russia, other foreign companies will not be allowed to sell products here. And then such companies that invest, we pay subsidies to farmers who buy equipment produced in Russia. This is a very good niche for localizing international products or companies. Then we have some preferences where foreign companies can get preferences in the Sverdlovsk region and Russia. First of all, in concluding a special investment contract, such a contract or individual agreement between the Russian Federation in the person of industry for trade and industries that guarantees for non-changing regulatory conditions, then commitments to create production in Russia, and the term of activities is not over 10 years. And within the framework of investment contract, special tax exemptions are provided, and exemptions of federal and regional taxes, and complete exemption of taxes for property. Also, you can get loans due to the development of industries to the amount of 500 million rubles with the interest of 5% per year. Getting investments for the special program from authorized banks is one of the tools of supporting that we are ready to offer our investors. And especially important for Sverdlovsk region is the opportunity for our industrial platforms, especially in the Titanium Valley, a special economic zone, where there is the necessary infrastructure for starting industries, production, communications, electricity, water, and close by is the biggest titanium producer in the world, VSMPO Visma. In the Titanium Valley, there is a Boeing factory working, and now a second factory is being completed of Boeing there. They will be producing in the special economic zone titanium parts that VSMPO Visma will be providing for Boeing. Also, we have an industrial park, the Bogoslovsky Industrial Park. That's a special industrial platform with all necessary communications. It's on the Federal Railroad that was recently put into operation. The road leads to the Khanty-Mansiysk Autonomous Region, which is a good way for bringing goods to the northern markets in Russia. Also, there are some tax exemptions foreseen for the industrial parks, such as land tax is zero, property tax is also zero, and profit or income tax is down to 5%, and insurance lowered from 30 to 7.6%. Also, I would like to speak about two projects that we are presenting for potential investments. This is the building the factory for production of methanol, and we plan to create a complex for deep processing of natural gas, and some investments in Nizhny Tagil that can provide products for the domestic market and the international market, and the capacity is planned for 600,000 a year, and the production is going to be very close to gas fields production, and we have some contracts already for gas supplies to till 2024, and we can have extension of contracts to 2035. All the project documentation for the plant is ready, and the expert check is concluded. And within the framework of INNOPROM, we are ready to conduct negotiations with investors on the possibility of participating in these projects. I'd like to use this opportunity to invite you to visit our stand of Sverdlovsk Oblast in Pavilion number 3. There is the Corporation for Development of Middle Urals will be presenting this project in detail. Another project is construction for the production of manganese products using innovation technologies. Development of this project is based on the existing deposit with the capacity of 200,000 tons a year, and construction of the enrichment factory. The innovation production of manganese fields allows us to work with respective ores, and which allows us to reduce the expenditures for resources more than 20%. This is environment-friendly production that corresponds all the international norms and CO2 exhausts norms. I'd like to use this opportunity to speak about the main international fair of INNOPROM that is being run for the 8th time in Yekaterinburg. I'd like to thank South Korea again that you are considering partnering with INNOPROM in 2018, and I think that INNOPROM is a good opportunity for Korean businessmen to visit Sverdlovsk region and start their business here. Also, preparation for INNOPROM means that in the year to come we will have to work very well together, and in the course of preparation for the fair we'll find new opportunities and discover new interests for development of industries in the Sverdlovsk region. In conclusion, I'd like to note that Yekaterinburg will be struggling for holding the Expo 2025. Yekaterinburg has won the topic for this fair, Changing the World, Exclusive Innovations for Our Children and Consequent Generations. I think this topic is very pressing for the world as a whole, and we hope for support from South Korea for them to support the Yekaterinburg application for Expo 2025. Thank you, Dmitry. And once we started to speak about the opportunities of developing Russian-Korean with individual regions in Russia. Today we mentioned the Sverdlovsk region and Moscow region that is represented today by a person from the government of Moscow, Mr. Butsayev. I'd like to address the next question to Denis Petrovich. Please share the successes or cases of development of projects of Korean companies in the Moscow region, and what is being done in order to have new Korean projects crop up in our country or in the Moscow region, or what regions are being developed now. Thank you very much. In our region, Korean companies are represented pretty widely. Recently, we were happy to see that the intensity of contacts or relationships and in localizing productions in the sub-Moscow region did not decline despite some turbulences in political and economic areas. The volume of international trade with Korea is now over $2 billion a year. And main companies here are Hyundai, LG, and companies for processing food products. I can say that recently we have seen a clear trend of expanding the presence of Korean companies, which makes us very happy. It's very important to attract new investors, but it's important to retain the existing investors and have them expand their business in different regions. That's the proof of beneficial and continuous investment climate for resident companies. On the whole, for sub-Moscow regions, I would like to say this is the extension of my inter-regional cooperation. I'd like to speak of what we offer the investors. We also have the practice of the so-called presentation roadshows in the region that we run in different countries. Recently, we had such presentations in European countries, but in the fall of this year, we're going to visit also South Korea and Japan. In that respect, I'd like to use this opportunity to thank the association that is our partner staging such roadshows. So sub-Moscow region is 8.5 people. That's the official statistical data, and including the migration flows, we have about 8 or 8.5 people. That is a big consumer market, and in all indicators we occupy leading positions. We're number 3 in the gross product in the country, number 1 in industrial development, we're second in trade, and we're number 3 in the living standard. Presently, in the sub-Moscow regions, we have 4 international airports. These are the Soviet time airports, the hubs of railroad aviation, with the total number of passengers that flow through these transportation hubs is about 80 million people a year. We pay very much attention to one of our main advantages, which is people and the research and scientific potential that were created in the middle of the last century from the 13 scientific cities, and 8 of them are in the sub-Moscow region. And we're second in Russia as to the number of specialists with a second university degree, and we have 1/5 of all the research projects. They fall to the sub-Moscow region, and in the areas of our scientific cities, we started to set up special sites for business development. We call them the technological and implementation platforms. This is for R&D and startup companies that are invited to come to these areas, having highly skilled personnel, and these caters are continuously replenished. People can get additional education or scientific degrees for those who do research. We're the biggest region in Russia for construction. We put into operation the most housing square meters, and we have the growing volume of industrial property. If I were to speak about the priority industries, I can say that we are on the average of the country, except oil and gas. We don't have oil and gas. All the rest industries we do have. What do we do to have companies successfully operate? Mr. Vorobyov, our governor, set the task of creating an industrial site in every municipality. We have 48 sites already prepared. So in the sub-Moscow region, we are leaders in the number of industrial parks. No other subject of Russia has more sites, and we have a multiple of the others. The special trend is work with international partners. For them is important the presence of special economic zones. We are also leaders. We have 3 special economic zones. 3 of them, they were started in 2015. We have the best zone of the technological and the implementation features. We use the one window in one window way. I won't dwell on this especially, but it proved its topicality and demand. The investors are supported both in the stage of preparation and the project implementation in the sub-Moscow areas. We have one of the first project offices for the support of investors during the construction stage. This excludes the necessity for the investor to get clearance documentations in many different offices that are responsible for that. Now you can go to a single window, and the managers will provide all that, and they will support you in all stations and help you to process all documentation for implementation of the project. We have implemented a whole gamut of tax exemptions that we provide in the territory of Russia. There are special investment contracts. There's a RIPS and regional investment regional contracts, and regional exemptions that we provide for those who invest into the economies in the excess of $1 million. Using this opportunity, I would like to dwell also on one indicator that we think is very important. Despite the fact that the economic situation is not very simple, sub-Moscow regions continue to invest international investments in the amount of 600 million to 650 million rubles a year, and our investors are the main leading companies of the world in the car building, machine building, electronics, and trade. One of the recent successes, I would like to note that in the beginning of this year, in the presence of Mr. Manturov, we laid the stone for the construction of Mercedes factory. This is the complete cycle of Mercedes car production, including painting, bodywork, and of course, final assembly. We would like very much that our colleagues would like visit sub-Moscow regions and visit the industrial and technological sites that we are starting. It's really worth doing. Thank you. Thank you, Denis Petrovich. Really, our Korean delegation will be spending 2 days in Moscow, and we're going to visit some industrial parks and special economic zones in the sub-Moscow region. They have a very intense agenda, and will not be limited by events in Yekaterinburg. Now, Sergei Vologodsky has joined us. He's deputy director in the Foundation for Development of Industries in Russia. That is especially special institute that was set up to provide financial help in the industrial area for development projects and is one of the centers for support of foreign investors that would like to implement industrial projects in Russia. Sergey, using this opportunity, I would like to ask you to speak about what Russian government is doing. You're actually the agent of the Russian government. What is the government offering foreign investors, and what support measures are offered for improvement of business environment, and what can Korean companies hope for in Russia? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'd like to focus on a few main topics. Number one is the mechanism of special investment contract. Our colleagues from the sub-Moscow area know that very well, because some companies like Mercedes that were approved by Belarus, these are companies concluded, and like Mercedes, they signed the investment contracts. They signed the contract already. I have a presentation. Special investment contract is an opportunity for investors to conclude an agreement with the Russian Federation, where a third party can be a region from the Russian Federation. And the contract stipulates special conditions of doing business and special projects for achieving the amount of investments and creating the amount of workplaces, and the Russian Federation will provide the preferences and opportunities for that. If I were to speak about this mechanism, then first of all, it allows to state the stability of taxation for the term of about 10 years, up to 10 years, and in June, in the Petersburg Economic Forum, the President of the Russian Federation gave the assignment of increasing the term of the special investment contract from 10 to 20 years. So the stability will be assured for a longer term, and considering the amount of investments to claim the opportunity is 150 million rubles, and the preferences that you can get is the opportunity to get the simplified procedure of getting the Russian producer status, simplified access to state order for projects in excess of 3 billion rubles, and tax exemptions, especially for foreign companies. This criterion is becoming important, because we can guarantee the non-deterioration of taxation, and the opportunity of having 0% tax for income, and depending on the opportunity or the possibilities of the region, we foresee the opportunity of reducing other taxes that are controlled by the region. The SPIC mechanism is gaining momentum, and among the companies that concluded the special investment contracts, we are showing in the slide, number one company is the agricultural equipment producer from Germany, then comes Mazda, then GMS, Gidromash, then Gemoria, Gazprom, and Gazprom Invest for gas and oil equipment, Eurokim, Transneft, and the last project that was approved was Belarus, that is being implemented in the Moscow region. Speaking about the special investment contract, I'd like to complete with that. Now I'd like to switch to the topic of the foundation for the investment foundation. We are ready to provide consultations to all companies who apply for support. And speaking about the foundation for the development of industries, we present preference investments conditions. This is 5% per year and 1% per year tax. And recently we started 2 new programs for components and conversion, and we hope the number of applications will grow. Speaking about the conditions of support, I'd like to say that on the average, the loan is from 50 million rubles to 500 million rubles, and the interest, depending, will be 5 or 1%, and there is also the possibility of postponing the payment of the body up to 3 years, or maybe from 5 to 7 years. By implementing this support program and providing special loans, we can finance special expenditures by the foundation, but capital costs and financial of turnover are not financed. That will be the duty of the investor, or maybe by other credit tools. Two investment programs that we started is the conversion program, and that is for conversion of companies that work in the defense industries to civil products. Korean colleagues probably are not so much interested, but the component program provides for more preferable conditions for getting financing in the first 3 years with an interest of 1% per year, and for the year 4 and 5 is 5% per year interest. And for components, we envisage a wide gamut of industries. There is special regulation number 719 that includes all processing industries. And if we were to speak about the targeted loans, we mostly finance purchases of equipment, certification, commissioning, and depending on the program of different target programs, we don't finance capital construction or repair of structures. Research is not possible to be financed, or military production is not financed, or refinancing of previously provided loans. We are very transparent. We try to interact through the individual office. We have income checks. We consider the projects, and we provide the statement about whether it can be accepted or not. And we provide comprehensive checks, and we make a final decision. Now we have financed 162 projects in different regions in Russia. And speaking about the Sverdlovsk region and Moscow region is in position number 1, and Sverdlovsk region is in position number 3. And if we look at the distribution of industries, pharmaceuticals and metallurgy account for more than 50% of all the projects that we financed. Also, I'd like to point out that based on the foundation, there is an investment center for support. We're operators for special investment contracts, and the government has other tools that provide for subsidizing investment interests and support for different companies that sell products for export. And we consult in the mode of single window. You can get loans if you apply using special phone numbers. We'll be happy to answer all your questions.
Thank you, Sergey. Today we have heard different opinions on the issue of cooperation from the governmental bodies and the business community. And in our panel session today, we are joined by Mr. Lee Sang-jun, representatives of Expert University, community, and of course we can discuss applied issues of cooperation between Russian and Korean business, but we also need to look at the expert opinion from the academic circles. As a person who is watching this process of business interaction from the side, what do you think? What are the objective parameters? Do they exist today to make sure that Russian-Korean economic relations develop and some joint projects are implemented? Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to talk in detail about the free trade agreement between Korea and the Eurasian Economic Union. But actually, I would like to address the topic from an even broader perspective and express a wish of Korean entrepreneurs in terms of Russia. The trade between Russia and Korea last year reduced, but currently we can see the process of reviving this trade. So there is a big potential of developing the trade, which is reviving now. To increase the level of cooperation in trade, to reach a new level, we need to develop a broader cooperation model. Firstly, it involves enhancing the cooperation in the industrial area, and we know that modernizing the Russian economy is focused on the energy sector and on creating agricultural industry centers and construction, making precision machines. In these areas are interesting for our entrepreneurs. We also understand that these industries are well developed in Russia. Also, I would like to note that in September in Vladivostok at the third Eastern Economic Forum, we must discuss various specific issues for Korean business to participate in developing the Far East. Last year, Mr. Putin specified 4 points. Firstly, that was the super grid, the energy super cell, creating logistics networks, improving the business conditions, and creating an innovative cluster in the Far East. And our Korean entrepreneurs are very interested in participating in these projects associated with modernizing the economy. To achieve this, the Korean government and the Russian government must reduce institutional barriers, as we understand very well. In the early in the beginning of this millennium, investment conditions were below the 100th place, but now Russia is number 46 in terms of investment conditions. I expect that in the nearest future, Russia will be able to reach the 20th place. I would like also to dwell on the following points. What have our businessmen said? Our businessmen wanted and do want for the Russian government to eliminate administrative barriers. And Korean entrepreneurs it's hard for them to discuss these problems because they don't want to complain on these problems. So I just want to voice their opinion here. I think it makes sense to collect such opinions and maybe do a kind of survey among our entrepreneurs, asking them what problems they face in doing business with Russia. Also, we need to sign the free trade zone agreement and sign it. And Korea has already signed free trade agreements with many countries. And many say that this agreement is going to be beneficial only for Korea, but I do not think so. It's also going to be very beneficial for Russia, this free trade agreement. And Russia will be able to reach a new growth dynamics, and Korean capital and marketing capabilities will be combined with resources and infrastructure networks from Russia, which will make it easier to access third countries' markets. So, free trade agreement between Korea and Eurasian Economic Union will be beneficial not only for Korea but for Russia as well. This agreement is going to be a good venue for our companies to move to Eurasian markets. As for investment objects in Moscow and in Russia, the investment conditions are sometimes significantly better, but in other regions, investment conditions are not so good. So to solve this problem of unbalance, this agreement will also be pivotal in solving these problems. We know very well that Eurasian Economic Union has recently signed such an FTA with Vietnam. And frankly speaking, the Eurasian Economic Union has not yet positioned itself very strongly in global markets. That is why a free trade agreement with Korea will improve the image of the Eurasian Economic Union and Russia in general. I think that any institution needs time to mature, and with time, such institutions can become even more efficient for all parties involved. We know very well that there are different problems that are not solved yet and challenges, but I'm positive that we can overcome them. We have a potential for solving such difficulties. Also, we will be able to overcome these difficulties. And finally, I would like to emphasize that this future is being created. It doesn't just come, and the future depends on our effort and the efforts of Russian and Korean governments, on Korean and Russian businesses. And we hope on more active efforts and on joining efforts for achieving the great future, our future together. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, dear professor. I believe that you have dwelt on some important topics. In your speech, you were talking about the barriers that exist for Russian and Korean business, barriers to bilateral trade and investments. And I would like to invite Mr. Kim Jong-kun, Kotra director in CIS, to maybe try to continue this topic, since your agency basically represents the Korean business in Russia and is working on promoting it. We would like to know your point of view regarding the barriers that exist today and the most important issues. Or maybe we have prospects instead of barriers, prospects for further work. Good afternoon. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted to say, and it already has been mentioned, so I would probably just summarize all the speeches made by the previous speakers. But still, first of all, I would like to talk about the condition of trade relations between our countries, then about the industrial development policy in Russia and Russian strategic industries. And in these industries, how we can develop the cooperation between our countries further. You know that the goods turnover between our countries is increasing. It started increasing in 2013 after re-establishing diplomatic relations, and after that international trade was either growing or staying the same. And we don't even know if it's going to recover to reach the former level. Many of us have already said, of course, that this year we can see some, we can already see some growth of bilateral trade relations, but still I think that this amount of bilateral trade is not going to increase as quickly as it used to. The main reasons are as follows. You know, the main export goods is heavy machine building, but still we are importing gas and oil from Russia, naphtha and other materials like that. As for shipbuilding or cars or car parts that we have, they are losing their competitiveness gradually. But Russia doesn't want to import such products from other countries. And INNOPROM is one of the events that will make it possible to develop these industries, manufacturing such heavy machining products. So the current trade relations between our two countries will not make it possible for us to increase the volume of trade. And as I know, the Russian government is now more aimed at supporting import substitution companies. But you know that Korean products are losing competitiveness compared to Chinese products. So gradually the opportunities of selling products to Russian market are decreasing for Korean companies. About $300 million is the Industrial Development Fund. This is the amount provided as a loan to Russian domestic manufacturers by this fund. So in the future, the import volume from Korea to Russia is going to decrease. In 2012, according to the legislation of the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Russian Federation, they are now actively developing the policy of manufacturing development. But as you know, depending on the global oil prices, Russian economy is experiencing certain fluctuations. About 70% or of economy of Russia's export is oil and gas, and we need to change this export structure. And the industry is developing nowadays, and I believe that consumer goods, however, is not so well developed in Russia, even though heavy machine building is developed in Russia very much. So Russia needs to develop its consumer industry as well as increase its labor productivity. It's 13-14% is the share of processing industries in Russia's GDP. So the policy of developing domestic manufacturing is very important for Russia, as this industry is being developed. The Russian government limits foreign companies, limits their participation in government contracts, for example, in engineering, machine building, and other equipment. For example, if there are two CIS companies that compete for a government contract, it means that a third company from abroad cannot participate. In the Republic of Korea, they also have this policy for processing industries, Renault, shipbuilding, car manufacturing, or household appliances manufacturing. These industries are not highly competitive. So we are trying to create technologies in these areas and develop technologies that we already have, like biotechnologies and so on. In such conditions, Russia has a great opportunity for developing further cooperation between our countries. We can also say that the Republic of Korea is gradually losing its competitiveness in car manufacturing and shipbuilding. While Russia has various tools, and Russia has created institutions that support and develop domestic manufacturing. For example, in terms of shipbuilding, Russia is not so competitive. In creating certain types of ships. Even though Russia has good capacity for manufacturing cars, 3.5 million cars per year, but still Russia has 1,800,000 cars were sold, and only 50% of this capacity is working. The Republic of Korea, it will be hard for us to sell our cars in the Russian market. As for the healthcare industry, about 35% of Russian domestic medicine has 35% share of the market, and that the other 65% of pharmaceutical products are imported. And agricultural industry is going to be is going to increase its automation and so on. As for developing the Far East, the territory of the Far East is 35% of the total territory of the Russian Federation, but the population of this region is very small. Fishing and shipbuilding, forestry are the main strategic industries for the Far East, as well as processing industries. And it's also going to develop in the Far East. The Russian government has already started working actively on developing processing industries, and in this respect, the Russian government is giving a lot of benefits to resident foreign companies. They're also going to open a casino or a golf course. So in the Far East, these are the strategic high priority industries. So how then can Korean companies participate in this development of strategic industries? Industrial diversifying the manufacturing is very important for Russia nowadays. We also need to modernize obsolete industrial capacities. So many of the plants and equipment is obsolete. We need current technologies to support the development of high-end industries. So for Korean companies, it's probably going to be a very good opportunity. Then, of course, technological innovations. They are very important for Russia. We also need to reorganize production territories based on the characteristics of the region. About 80% of the industry is located in the western part of the Russian Federation. So at least part of these should be transferred to the eastern part. In this regard, the Russian Federation is currently trying to develop the Far East. We also need to create a global network of deliveries using covering large territory. This is the essence of the policy for developing processing industries of the Russian Federation. And in this regard, I would like to present new options of developing the cooperation between our countries. We need joint R&D. We need to develop technical cooperation. We also need to create a consortium to move to other global markets. For example, Rosatom built many nuclear plants abroad, and the Republic of Korea is not going to create any more nuclear plants. So about 500 specialized companies can cooperate with Rosatom by creating a consortium, and we can also create a joint supply chain, a shared supply chain. As I have already said, Russia has now created several specialized economic zones, and the Korean companies need to go to these special economic zones more actively to localize their production together with local Russian companies. Only 2% of the total foreign Korean investment is the Russia's share. So Korean investment into Russia and Russian economy, specifically in the Far East, need to grow. So we need to find new cooperation options between our countries. For example, OEM manufacturing and manufacturing new products by converging the technologies of our two countries. For example, in Russia, tractor manufacturing is rather well developed, but it's not very well known abroad. For example, you have a production here, and there are Korean brands. That's one possibility. We also have a famous industry in Korea. So a Korean company offered to Russian companies to develop a new product, for example, vodka based on ginseng. And this means that we can move to third countries' markets. As you know, in Russia, Korean cosmetics is quite popular. So we can manufacture innovative cosmetics using imported raw materials and supply these products abroad. As I have already said, now every company, every Russian company has an innovation center, so we can achieve technological innovations by doing joint R&D work. And we can create joint R&D centers for companies of our two countries, and finished manufacturing products could be sold in Eurasian Economic Union countries, products manufactured based on Korean spare parts. Also, we can diversify the experts by sharing information and creating joint production using semi-manufactured parts and the other parties' experts. We can also liberalize the trade and expand investment between the two countries by signing an FTA between Korea and Eurasian Economic Union. But since Russia cannot sign such an agreement individually, in the past, I know that Eurasian Economic Union has signed an FTA with Vietnam, and as has already been mentioned, Korea has signed such agreements with 54 countries and negotiates with numerous countries of the world to sign such an agreement. So signing such an agreement between our two parties will lay the foundation of shared benefit and improve our bilateral trade and contribute to the development of both our countries' economies. As we have looked at various factors before, to provide sustainable economic cooperation, we need to develop new options of cooperation. Thank you very much. Indeed, it was a very detailed analysis, and a very specific plan of further cooperation has been suggested. We have only 5 minutes left, so I would like to ask our two last speakers who represent the business-specific companies to tell us a little bit about how they are ready to participate in this cooperation. Here we have Mr. Choi Jo-jin, here CEO of Korean gas boiler that is planning to localize its production in Russia, or at least is considering such an opportunity. Mr. Choi, could you please tell us briefly about your project and how you envision its development in Russia? Please, could you please take about 2 minutes? Yes, first of all, I would like to thank all organizers of this forum. Yes, our company manufactures gas boilers, and I would like to tell you a few words about our products. You all know what a gas boiler is. We are located in Incheon city near the airport. 3 years ago, we started our work, and now we export to China, Kazakhstan, Jordan, Chile, Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, and so on. We have translated our catalog in all these languages, and you know that's what our product looks from inside. European and Korean steel mixed together for convenience, so that so that it's more convenient for the customers to use. What I'd like to say is as follows. In the Russian market, the volume of Korean boilers is gradually increasing, of course, but the demand for gas boilers in Russia is also growing. Last year, 1,300,000, and this year about 1.5 million. This is about the same demand as in Korea, but the demand in Korea is no more growing, while it does increase in Russia year by year. And in China, we can now see a rapid growth. So in China, it's developing very quickly. In about 2 years, 2,200,000 boilers will be sold in Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus. The volume of Korean boilers is about 11–13%. And compared to European products, Korean boilers are highly competitive. In China, our products occupy about 10.5% of the Chinese market. In Russia, of course, we're using the European technology, German, Italian, Czech technology. It used to be imported in Russia, but Russian technology is also quite high. Its level is high, but our Korean boilers are about 200,000 boilers are sold in Russia, made in Korea, and in Russia the number of companies manufacturing boilers is also gradually growing. Bosch, for example, makes such gas boilers. So last year, the following data was published. For the year 2016. The data shows that Korean products are very popular among the users and can compete with European products. 7 advantages of Korean boilers have been named. So we can say that Korean boilers are still rather highly competitive. But still, in the Russian market, even though the volumes sold are quite big, but we cannot develop and manufacture Korean boilers in Russia in the current conditions. So, if possible, it's necessary to reduce the price by about 15% compared to the present level. Only then will we be able to sell more Korean boilers in Russia. About 1.4 million or 1.5 million of boilers are sold by us in Russia, but we want to sell more boilers in Russia, and to that end, we need
to more actively cooperate. This company can create a facility in Sverdlovsk Oblast. We invite you for negotiations, and on the INNOPROM affair, we can come to an agreement. Sverdlovsk Oblast was always so hospitable, and some more possible cooperation projects presentation. And our Rusal company is ready to offer the Korean business an opportunity to implement joint projects. And I'd like to give the floor to Igor Marchev. Just 2 minutes, please. Good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to present my project that may become a new agenda for the Russian-Korean economic cooperation. This project was initiated by the Aluminum Association and the Rusal company, who is the world's leader in aluminum production. That's the projects of deep processing of aluminum and the production of aluminum products in Russian Federation. I have a little time. I can say that our market is growing and the demand is growing, and the demand for products using aluminum in Russia and the world is growing. In these slides you can see that these are automotive industries, machine building, construction, cable producing, and other industries. I would like to point out one important trend in application to aluminum industries and aluminum products. The market is not limited to the European Asian Economics Community. The export of aluminum products from Russian Federation is growing. This shows that in Russia we can create and produce products with deep processing of aluminum and end products. These are automotive components, cables, and also construction components. Here you see the products or the merchandise that is being imported in Russia. You can see all the gamut of industries that we can set up in Russia based on aluminum, and that has demand in the market. An important component of the program is that Russia will adopt the plan for increasing the plan of consumption of aluminum. That's good for the companies who want to stop production. The concept of the project is that the sites for processing aluminum and producing end products using aluminum, we suggest to create based on our aluminum factories in Russia that are located in Krasnoyarsk, Volgograd, and in the future in Khakassia. So the producers of merchandise using aluminum will have access to liquid aluminum, and they can save on logistics, being located very close to producing aluminum. The main advantage is that we plan to develop territories in special economic zones, or the accelerated development zones. We suggest also infrastructure in a high degree of readiness and the support of the Aluminum Association of Russia in the issues of marketing and etc. The possible areas of localizations are very broad. This is rolled products, cables, packing materials, consumer goods, construction materials, and there are specific investment projects for products that are not produced in Russia presently or produced in low numbers. These are automotive components and components for machine building And we plan, as I said, we plan to develop in the special economic zones and advanced development zones. You Korean companies, you know the advantages. There's the tax exemptions and income profit exemptions, and an important note, considering the previous reports, that cooperation should be based on the high technologies. In Krasnoyarsk and Moscow, we have corporate research centers, and we run a joint program with the Moscow Institute of Alloys and Steel. We can cooperate with Korean companies in the areas of scientific research for consumer goods and industrial production. Thank you for the opportunity. I was very brief because we're running out of time, and I invite Korean companies to visit our sites, and we hope that cooperation in the area of aluminum will be a new topic in the Korean-Russian cooperation. Thank you, Igor. I'd like to comment. I'd like to ask Kamensk-Uralsky factory to the program of the aluminum production, because in Kamensk-Uralsky we have the opportunity of getting ore, and the main raw material is mined in the Sverdlovsk region. The raw material is here. So for the next forum we'll try to do it. So now we have the agreement in that. Dear colleagues, dear experts, first of all, experts, thank you very much for your input. All this was very useful and constructive. Special thanks to the Korean Association for International Trade for the organizing of this Russian-Korean Industrial Forum, and our Association of Industrial Parks in Russia. We have been working for a long time with the Korean Industrial Forum, and we set up joint business missions to Korea, to Russia, and we regularly share information. And today we would like to conclude a special agreement, and for signing this agreement, I invite representatives of Mr. Zhuravsky, Executive Director of the Association of Industrial Parks, and the Senior Vice President of Quito, Li Zhezhou. Great. Now we have put our cooperation on paper. I'd like to say a few words in regard to this agreement. Today's event is called the Russian-Korean Forum. On behalf of our organization, I can say that for us, the Russian-Korean Forum is not just today's event in this room, but we view it as everyday work in the course of the year. And for a few years now, we consider Kita as the main partner in Korea. And we see the platform of Kita as the way of cooperation of Russian and Korean business. And we hope to work together for many years ahead and be useful to both Korean business and Russian companies. Thank you. Yes, really. Today, many people were speaking about the future cooperation between our countries. And everything you said is now recorded in this agreement. Although today we concluded this MIU, but this is not just a document. We should try and apply all efforts for execution of this document and development of cooperation. We have agreed on future cooperation. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not forget to return simultaneous translation equipment, headsets. Please return your headsets as you exit the room. Thank you.